Welcome to Money on Tap. Money on Tap, your personal finance headquarters, where we bring out the professionals' experience and some fun in what we call three-dimensional investing, utilizing insurance, brokerage, and fee-based planning. That's what we do on this show. We look at all sides of the issues, and we bring a fully independent planning perspective to the table. Welcome. You are listening to Money on Tap. My name's Seth Cressman.
And I'm Ben Brayshaw.
We're so glad to have you along for the ride today, and what a ride it will be. Joining us today, Marisol Goodman Attorney at Law from MC Goodman Law, LLC. And she is an expert in estate planning, estates and trust administrations, and corporate formation. And this is really, really timely, critical news for everyone out there.
It's about time we got an expert on this show somewhere, Seth.
I'm trying. I'm really trying here, man. It's so hard not to take it personally when you say that.
Oh, that's right.
Folks, if you're new to Money on Tap, if this is your first time listener, we're going to have fun. First of all, we just got to lay some groundwork here. This is going to be a good time. And Marisol is amazing. She's just wonderful at what she does. And for you guys to get an opportunity to listen to her is so great. I'm so excited to have her on.
She's got a big heart. She's an amazing person. I think, she really cares about the outcome for her clients. We meet a lot of different people. We have a lot of attorneys that approach us. I really like her. She seems solid. I think a lot of people need somebody who are going to put a personal touch to estate planning. And I like what she has to say in that area. And I really like her awareness of what's going on in the court system, Seth. There's some craziness there. There's some craziness.
It is wild, to say the least. Because how many people, unless you're engaged in the courts currently, how many people know you're probably not going to get an appearance anytime soon?
Yeah, I mean, unless the president's getting the attention, court systems aren't paying attention to much. So, this is some serious stuff, issues in the estate world that are causing the backlog, the problems. There's so much going on that if you're dealing with a loved one right now, that's really complicated. Now, if you're doing an estate or you're looking at doing an estate, now's the time to take in things like, hey, how is my estate going to work in a pandemic? Am I set up correctly? Is that the question? I mean, that's the new, I hate that word, new normal, but that's the new normal. Like, you have to ask, what happens if we go through a global pandemic? If someone said that to me 2 years ago, I'd be like, well, listen, relax. Those are just movies. But now we're in one.
Yeah. So we're going to get there. But before we get there, it is time for Money in the News. Hey, if you're just jumping in with us, you're listening to Money on Tap, and you can reach us at 855-226-8551 or info@yourmoneyontap.com. And we've got articles. We got a backlog of articles, as a matter of fact. We just can't stop from getting these headlines that we keep on wanting to have these conversations about. But the one that I want to talk about is actually really fun for us because it's not about the market. It's not about estate planning. It is about
could be the worst. It could be the worst investment of your life.
Kiplinger brings to us, what was it? 13 reasons.
13 reasons.
13.
That's horrendous. If you got 13 reasons for anything to regret, is probably a reason why you shouldn't do it. Okay, so 13 reasons you will regret an RV in retirement. I mean, I've actually debated, we talk to so many people about whether an RV makes sense or not in retirement. They're like, oh, I'm going to get an RV. We're going to travel across the country. And I thought about it. I'm like, do I really want to do an RV or not? Because there's a part of me that looks back at my childhood and says, I love camping. That was fun. We had a good time. Can't sleep on the ground anymore, though. That's impossible. But RVing, 13 reasons you'll regret it. This guy does not like it at all.
I only see the bright side
Bob
here.
Bob Neat here from Kiplinger. I mean, let's just break it out here, Seth. I mean, we don't have time to go through all 13, but...
Well, that would be the show, wouldn't it?
That would be the show.
And it would just be too much fun for even us.
But they're super expensive, right? I mean, and then they're even more expensive. Number two was like, well, people are macking these things out. They're making them, they're upgrading the upgrades. I mean, the decor and everything is just out of control.
Well, they're incredibly, like on the front end, they're incredibly expensive. If you're just talking about going down to the lot and pick one of these things up, right? Maybe you're not having to do an update on it, but it's kind of like boats. How many hours do these things have on them that are in the 70s? I mean, they could be hardly used. But if you have that 70s decor and it's really not like your style today and you want to update it, thousands.
Yeah, and they're super expensive because when you drive them off the lot, they depreciate quickly. It's hard to buy a used RV that you really like, and so people buy new. They think they're retiring. We're going to use it a lot. Let's buy something we really like. But the used market is huge. There's a lot of people who buy them and they realize this is not for us.
Yeah, so. And I will say that I've talked with several people, one in particular, that their business is really finding these values and going in and doing some light modifications and updates. I mean, we're not talking about completely redoing the Airstream that they found out in the junkyard. This is, not that kind of a project. But people are turning a profit in this market with grabbing these and doing some updates and, reselling them.
Yeah, that's one thing. The other thing is traditionally, now maybe not right now, they're gas guzzlers. So, usually it's very expensive to fill them. But right now it might be on the cheaper side but it still takes a lot to run these things. But on the cost side, I mean, the cost of insurance, there's just cost after cost. But what was interesting in this article for me was I never thought about how healthcare could be a problem. Right. If you're traveling all over the place, like the hassle of just really just finding the right, getting the care you need or the checkups. I mean, you can't do this for long periods of time like that.
Well, how many times have we done the show, the 50 best places to retire?
Yeah.
No.
We haven't done that yet. But.
Basically, retiring in the U.S. is about as good as it gets, folks. But, we've done top 10 places to retire. And some of the factors have been healthcare, for sure. Like different states have different things going on with their healthcare. And that might make a decision as far as you're on the road with your RV.
But having your own personal doctor, that's obviously an issue, right? And then I think one of the things I would probably regret is having to deal with your own waste. I mean, the picture in this article is someone that's practically in a waste hazard suit, and it looks like, they've got all sorts of stuff going on there. So but
that's everybody today as you look around. Everybody's, in there.
And if you haven't enjoyed spending all the time, with your spouse or significant other at home in close quarters, you have close quarters here. That was another piece.
I can so hear the conversations, the people that just don't travel well together, thinking that this is a great idea.
Oh, my brother-in-law, he has some hilarious stories, him and his wife. They said it was great. I mean, at the end of the day, they laugh about it, but they said, the traveling, the stress, the traffic, the turning. I mean, you're driving this thing that's enormous. You're not used to it. It's just, that's actually another one of the items on this list. So
I think we're going to get all 13 in here. I think we just couldn't help ourselves.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm just scrolling through it. But an RV is really a major, major commitment. And honestly, I know that there's people who absolutely love these things. They can't get enough of them. And then there's people who absolutely think they would love them and they absolutely hate them. And so, it's a funny article. It's a good break from all the crazy stress of the stock market that we've been talking about over these weeks. But, yeah, it's a good one. That's a good find.
So I would just leave a recommendation. If you're wanting to test drive it, you can. People, they rent them out. They own these RVs. They own fleets of RVs, and you can rent it out for the month and go hit the road. See how it goes. What do you think?
Yeah, that's honestly probably one of the best ways to try to figure out if this is for you. If you can't get enough of it after a month and you're like, I got to get back out there, then go buy one. You're going to make a great investment then. Because investments are not just money. They're lifestyles. They're an experience. And traveling and spending time with family is huge. And honestly, I think we're starting to realize that more and more, especially with the pandemic, where real, true value in life is. And that's been one big takeaway for me in life. Honestly, I've enjoyed getting more down to earth with what's important.
I bet these things are just flying off the lot right now with everybody just wanting to get out of their house and go do something. Probably a good year to be in RV sales.
Yeah. Well, you've been listening to Money in the News. We're going to be back with Marisol Goodman. You can reach us at 855-226-8551. That's 855-226-8551. And you can email us at info@yourmoneyontap.com.
Hi, my name is Seth Crustman, partner with Brayshaw Financial Group and one of the co-hosts of Money on Tap. One of the biggest concerns and largest expenses people face today is taxes. Without thoughtful planning, taxes can destroy future retirement dollars, eliminating the possibility of a timely retirement or dreams of what you want retirement to look like. If you're like most people, you're getting closer and closer to retirement, and you may be wondering if you're taking the right steps. Will my income be enough? Will rising taxes force me to give up my dreams? How does inflation factor into all of this? These are real concerns, and you're not alone. Putting a plan around your financial future is what we do. If you have questions when it comes to your financial security, and if you're looking for a personalized solution, contact us at Brayshaw Financial Group, 855-226-8551. It's time for you to start getting answers to your questions. Headquartered in Bedford, New Hampshire, Brayshaw Financial has offices across the country. We'd love the opportunity to show you how we can help. There's absolutely no cost or obligation to meet with us. Call us at 855-226-8551. 855-226-8551.
Now back to Money on Tap with Ben and Seth.
Welcome back. We are glad to have you with us today. You're listening to Money on Tap, and today we get the privilege of having Marisol Goodman with us. Marisol is attorney at law at MC Goodman Law LLC, and her specialties are estate planning, estate and trust administrations, and corporate formation. Marisol, thank you so much for joining us at Money on Tap. How are you?
Good morning. Thank you, Seth. I'm doing very well, considering, yes.
Considering sounds a little loaded to me.
It does. Hey, how are you doing in the middle of a global pandemic?
There's an adjustment period of adjusting to what we consider a new normal, how we do business, how we interact with our clients. Moving forward in this time has presented some challenges in learning how to pivot quickly. So those are those things. There's that continuum of both business, how we continue to do our work, how we relate to other people, our relationships, and how we maintain a sense of mental health and balance in this time.
Those last 2 points you make are probably so, heart-striking for so many listeners. I mean, I just think about, the suicide rate that's up, the depression, the anxiety, the abuse. There's just so many different pieces that are really, really creating a lot of waves inside the relationship zone that we have with people that, I don't know parents that really don't love their children, but there's, we've heard about abuse that's occurred because it's just people are just so on edge. And new normal is a word that brings people to edge too. I've noticed that that's become a hot word in our community, in our society, and when people hear that, they get nervous because they don't know what that is. It's an unknown, and I'm really glad we have you here, Marisol, because I think there's a lot of people in the estate world that have either done an estate or are thinking about doing an estate, or even in the middle of doing estate documents, considering all that's going on, and just are not sure what to do, on top of the people who are, and I have a client who is settling her mother's estate even right now as we speak, and the complications of that. So I think having you on is so timely, and if you're a listener, you have a very great opportunity to hear what Marisol has to share with us today. She's truly an expert in this area. So Marisol, tell us a little bit about, let's just get the landscape of what you've seen change inside the legal realm, specifically with the pandemic inside the estate world. Where do you, I'm thinking documents, I'm thinking settling estates. Where would you like to start on that? Because I think there's a number of different issues we know we want to talk about here.
Well, what I've seen in my particular practice and among my clients initially was this moment of, I have to say, paralysis of stopping. What to do? How do I proceed? Because it's big. It feels overwhelming. And I've been working with them specifically to take a really deep breath and ground in the moment. What's happening now? What can I do now? And what is coming out of that is this new conversation with people with their family, their loved ones, this new conversation about what does it mean to really create this beautiful safety network, this guideline. It's kind of like this plan that allows for for themselves to manage their assets, allows for someone else to step into that shoes. So it's about getting our affairs, both in our life and our business, in a more organized fashion. And creating organization allows for a sense of being able to ground into that, knowing what you own, who has it, who will step into your shoes if you need assistance in that time. And it can be both temporary and long term. So that's kind of the moment, is getting people through that process. Where to start? A lot of clients often talk to me about, what should I do? And to them, my answer is really, it depends on what you want to do. What are your goals? Kind of talking about the overarching goals. What does that look like? How are assets actually held? Who owns what? And then I can start to describe to them the process for each asset as we kind of go through it, and we start to reach these overlying themes of transfer. If a spouse is going to be managing them, if a sister, a best friend, how does that look like, and how do you protect folks? So that's the conversation, how I start there, instead of getting into the techniques, because that can be overwhelming. My goal and my job is to let them know that I will help provide which techniques work best for their situation.
Marisol, this is interesting because, we do something that, and we find this to be a little bit of a problem with a lot of clients or people that come in and say, we're interested in talking to you about our situation and kind of what's going on. And we'll start talking to them about, well, hey, what do you own? How is it owned? Who are the beneficiaries? Who are your contingent beneficiaries? Do you have wills? Do you have trust? Do you have all this stuff? Very, very few people are really truly aware on a depth, that's necessary, honestly, to properly even help a lot. So we have to do a lot of work. We usually end up saying, listen, we need to become your advisor just to find out what's going on here. And we actually create a progress report for our clients that lists their assets and all their beneficiaries and, their contingent beneficiaries. And if they don't have one, and we work with the attorney, you bring up a great point of just understanding what you have and creating basically a real document, because most financial firms, I find, they manage an account or they manage a couple of accounts. And then the client has, some random play account out there, and then they've got a couple pieces of real estate. They don't actually have a full listing. What we try to do is bring a full listing to the table in general. We list everything they own. We tell them, even if you have a pension, we want to know it, and we want to have it on our documentation so we can help whoever comes through. So you bring up a great point there. How are you finding how are you finding when people come through the door, how you address that? How do you help them discover some of that awareness?
For myself, often when my clients walk through the door, I ask them about their relationship with their financial advisor, if they have one, their relationship with their accountant, if they have one. Those are key relationships in providing me the information that I need. I imagine most of your clients run businesses. They come through and they run a business, and part of running a business is knowing your numbers. So that same application of running a business that does well are folks who really know their numbers. We take that same mindset into their home life, knowing their numbers, what they own, what they actually need their signature on in order to access. So that's kind of the key part, is if we can't get their signature, then we can't access that asset that provides for everyone else in their life who's dependent on them. So I start with that process of, we take our time working through that list and compiling an overarching set of assets, people who are in their lives, people who depend on them, and paint kind of this picture. And so I break it up into more manageable pieces. So it doesn't have to be done all at once.
Now, tell us a little bit about the pieces, the different pieces you like to put in place. I know we were going to talk a little bit about wills and trusts, but feel free, just go and talk through it, because I can see it's on the tip of your tongue here.
Yes. The pieces that I put in place for an individual is talking about, okay, who manages their financial affairs? What does that look like? It's normally them. And so then talking about who is best set for that. So I talk about what a fiduciary is. A fiduciary is a person that you give responsibility to. It's actually a position of obligation. It's not honorary in the sense that we think of being exalted. It comes with obligations, a duty of care. So teasing out who that person is and what that looks like And so that's often like the durable power of attorneys, trust. We start talking about who manages the actual asset. The other one is healthcare proxy. Who manages their medical decision? So that's another component of treatment, because normally it's them. They're the ones making their decision, what happens and when. And so I walk them through that conversation in a separate part of who does that particular component. And so there are a number of documents I put in place. Some people are often refer to it as like an advance directive, a mental health care power of attorney, HIPAA release, living will. There are a lot of different terms of art, and there are some nuances, but my job is not for them to worry about that particular piece. That's my job. My job is to figure out which techniques work best for their given situation. Another component could be who manages personal decisions, a sense of not just mental health and medical, but education, religious aspects, charity, or giving. So there are different parts of nuances as I start to tease out what's really important and core to their core values. What are the three things they hold most dear, and trying to create this overarching. And then I decide, yes, that conversation, wills versus trust.
That's a good point. I know I'm kind of taking the radio here on Seth, but I always joke around with people. If you have to do a power of attorney for your financials and you have to do healthcare directives, it's as a kind of funny. Don't make it the same person if you got two kids, right? Oh, hey, listen, I'll go spend all your money while you're on a, but sarcastically, but in reality, it's really hard to choose those people and to make that decision.
Absolutely. And I think the person who's on the other end, and that's what I guide my clients do, is put themselves in their shoe, is that they may equate a position equate that with love, for instance. So if someone gets chosen, what does that mean? Is there an underlying message under that position that's been chosen? Does that person love me less? Does that person love me more? And so I think those are subconscious messages that we receive that we don't quite untangle. And so I help my clients untangle those.
Folks, we're talking with Marisol Goodman, attorney at law at MC Goodman Law, LLC. And she is a wealth of knowledge. If you're just jumping into this show, we're talking about estate planning, estate and trust administrations, and corporate formation. For the most part right now, what's timely for us to be talking about is what's happening in this current marketplace for wills and trusts and the court, that what's being handed down through the courts, and how Marisol is finding, walking her clients through the decision-making process is what we're talking about right now, but also what is happening in the courts and limiting potentially what used to be just granted as process and dailies of life, as we would go to the court and file the docs and then 5 days later have somebody appointed. That's changed a lot. Can you bring us into where you're at with your clients and helping them really make these decisions differently than maybe they would have 2 months ago?
Absolutely. So 2 months ago, that picture looked different when I talk to my clients, because again, that's the circumstances. What I'm finding currently, what's happening in the courts, is that there are certain matters that have been identified as essential. The Supreme Justice wrote down this order that said, which items are we going to address first? And those items are not probate matters. They're not estate planning matters. They tend to be items regarding civil commitment, like the removal of civil liberties. So those are criminal cases at best, temporary guardianships when you're taking somebody's civil liberty away, and those are made as priority cases, which means that for the most part, a lot of probate matters are on hold. And I can give a personal example. Is I filed my father's probate back in March 10th, and it has not yet been reviewed. Normally that turnaround would be 4 to 5 days to appoint my brother as personal representative of that estate. And that has not happened. And I don't imagine that will happen for a bit of time. And so for clients, this can have implications for them if they're relying on a will. And then what happens is those assets are not available to their heirs, whether it's spouses, children, brothers, sisters, family partners. They're just not available. There's no person who's been designated with their signature to be able to manage those assets. And that's what probate does. It designates an individual to use their signature in lieu of the person who's passed. And so if you can't get those pleadings looked at currently, that's going to have an impact for some families, especially if assets are tied up like a house. And if somebody has majority of their assets tied up in their home, and you can't do anything as far as accessing the bank accounts to pay for the mortgage, those obligations continue to go on. And so you need to have ready liquid assets available. And so for some of my clients, I would ordinarily recommend a will. I'm now recommending, for instance, a trust, so that there is an ease of management that happens and we're not waiting 6 months or more for just an appointment that would have taken 4 days. And I put those numbers out. They are going to start catching up, but they have to catch up with the matters back in March, and we're now in May. So there's a continual filing. I'm still filing, just nothing is getting reviewed or looked at.
What kind of trusts are you recommending? Let's get a little more detail with that kind of thing.
That's always particular to a person's situation, but often most trusts that we are recommending as attorneys tend to be revocable trusts.
Okay.
They are what we call them see-through trusts. They're basically a contract between the person who owns the asset with the person who manages the asset, and that's usually the trustee, for the benefit of the person who gets the asset. And so initially in a trust, one individual can serve all three roles. And that's really helpful when you have somebody who wants to continue to have all the control over their assets. That's a good vehicle for allowing that to occur. And what you're doing is you're putting into place who steps into the shoes when one of those roles can't be fulfilled anymore.
When you say revocable trust, I mean, let's just, for simplicity's sake, if you could just go through the difference between a revocable and irrevocable without too much detail, just to give people, because people hear the word trust and they hear revocable and it gets a little scary and so forth.
Yes.
Could you just share a little bit on that?
Well, a revocable trust basically means that the person can change it anytime they want. They can change who gets what. They can change who does what. There are no limits as to changing it. So when I say a revocable trust, that can be revoked. It just means that the person, and they say, well, when is it really revoked? Well, it's revoked when you change it. When you make a change, we often revoke the trust and reinstate it, or we can do an amendment to it. But basically, you can change your mind at any time with a revocable trust. With a irrevocable trust, just like the name says, it's an actual gift. Once the document is signed, it becomes extremely difficult to change the terms of the document. You can't change the material purpose, which means what is the intent of the document? If it's supposed to provide for your 3 children, for instance, then that's the material purpose of that document. You can't go ahead and change who those beneficiaries are. You can't take life circumstances into play. It's giving away your asset to the trustee to manage it on behalf of the beneficiaries. So that's the difference. One is that you can change the terms at any time. And the other one is that it's only under limited circumstances can you change certain terms. Not all terms can be changed. It's an actual giveaway of gift.
Folks, you are listening to Money on Tap. You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or info@yourmoneyontap.com. Marisol Goodman, attorney at law at MC Goodman Law LLC, is joining us today, and we're discussing estate planning, trusts, wills, what is going on in the courts today, and some of the changes that are affecting our clients and potentially you, and things you need to be aware of. We're going to take a quick break. Again, you can reach us at 855-226-8551 or info@yourmoneyontap.com.
Hi, my name is Ben Brayshaw, one of the co-hosts of Money on Tap. If you have questions when it comes to your retirement and are looking for a personalized solution, contact us at Brayshaw Financial Group. In today's volatile stock market, we can help you plan to find your successful retirement solution. Am I saving enough? Am I saving into the right places? Do my investments match my appetite for risk? Do I have a tax strategy that is going to help me keep more of what I earn? How can I maximize my Social Security income? If you are like most people, you are getting closer and closer to your retirement and may be wondering if you're taking the right steps. If you're in retirement, you may be wondering, am I maximizing my income while preserving my estate and caring for my family? We talk about all things financial in what we call three-dimensional investing, putting a plan around your financial future. If you feel that now is the time to start getting the answers to some of these questions for your own situation, give us a call at Brayshaw Financial Group at 855-226-8551. Headquartered in Bedford, New Hampshire, we have offices throughout New England and across the country. We would love the opportunity to show you how we can help. There's absolutely no cost or obligation just to meet with us, and we welcome you to our office. Call us at 855-226-8551.
Now back to Money on Tap with Ben and Seth.
Welcome back. You're listening to Money on Tap. You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or info@yourmoneyontap.com. Today, we have the pleasure of talking with Marisol Goodman, attorney at law at MC Goodman Law, LLC. And Marisol really focuses her practice in estate planning, estates and trust administrations, and corporate formation. And if you want to get a hold of Marisol, feel free to reach out to us, or you can go ahead and look her up directly. But you can reach us again at 855-226-8551. We'd love to put you in touch. And we are grabbing some of what's really important for you to be paying attention to in your estate, and what are the changes that right now could be affecting you, especially if what you have is a will, and that's what you've designated as your directive to the courts after you pass away. That right now could be a bit of a sticking point, right?
Yes, it can be at the moment. Things are slowed down in the courts all over Oregon, as well as probably other states. And there are accumulation of a backlog of items that will need to be looked at. The other thing to keep in consideration is the budget. There is a major impact on the budget for Oregon. And some of those costs will need to come out of the operations for the state of Oregon, and that can include the court. So there may be a little bit of less availability of staff to process those cases. So things are going to just take longer in general.
When it comes to settling an estate, you have that kind of, 90 days. You're supposed to, settle the estate in 90 days, and then you file for an extension and so forth. I mean, we're talking about a backlog that would be, we're talking about a very, very large backlog. This is going to create complications for years, not because it's not just estate stuff that's on hold. You're talking about major, only essential, civil liberties are being dealt with. So we already had a backlog in most of the court systems around this country. So what does this mean for us in getting things done?
It means it's going to take a lot more time in general to get things done, and being patient and thinking ahead about what you want to put in place so that that time factor doesn't impact your family members adversely or affect them in a way that will cause them more stress. So that's when talking to financial planners, whether it's their agents, about what does their overall cash picture look like, and have they planned for an influx of cash in some ways? Is there some type of liquidity that can be drawn on while things are being settled? And if that is a huge consideration, or someone saying, oh, no, I may not have that in place, then again, talking to their financial advisor about what to put into place. Their financial advisor should be a source of education for them. It should be a source of, they should hear what's happening as far as their goals are and look at their overall picture in order to offer a technique. So again, it goes back to the goals. What are their goals? Being forthcoming with their professionals, so their professionals can then make a recommendation as to the techniques, the pros and cons of each technique. Absolutely.
Yeah, there's a lot inside all the different types of investments you can do, and how they intertwine and interlink with estates and inheritance and so forth. And that is a complex mess for a lot of people. I think Seth and I, we're fiduciaries. We handle a lot of different pieces as planners inside of the realm of just really helping people figure out how to get from point A to point B, and trying to dig in to say, what are you trying to accomplish? Which is what I hear you saying here right now, which is great. And that's exactly what you need, is someone who has something more than a 1 or 2 year investment view, who has a lifetime or a generational perspective of what's ahead. Let me ask you, this pandemic is something obviously unheard of, unforeseen, monumental in almost everyone's life around the world. How has it changed your practice? How has it changed the way, not just like doing Zoom calls or doing meetings like that, but how do you see your role now, even more so in helping people try to get from point A to point B? How is it going to change this whole world for you? Any thoughts on any of that?
Yes. I do have some thoughts on that. As far as changing my practice, I'm finding I'm spending more time, quality time with my clients, time that's about unearthing what's important. Also, reframing how we enter into the conversation. We're entering into the conversation with more of a sense of joy, that this is a gift that they're giving to their loved ones, that by creating this really clear succession plan, they're giving a gift of relief. They're giving a gift of groundedness so that there's a support in place when their loved ones are grieving for whatever reasons it's occurred. If it's a death, that they have someone there to support their family members through that process. If it's a temporary accident, an accident that they will recover from, it will put somebody in those roles who will know what to do so that won't be compounded. There's a sense of needing to be held when we're going through a traumatic process. And in some ways, this is a bit of a trauma for our clients to be going through. And so us supporting them through that process is key. And so I'm finding that it becomes even more important for me now to address that aspect of planning, that emotional aspect in planning, to shore up with what I actually do, the documents, the drafting of that, the transactional part.
I have a question that just popped in my head as I'm listening to you talk, because I'm thinking about transactional parts. And, I'm thinking about if you've had a loved one pass away, and like a parent, and, getting executor appointment, all those different pieces, like people have homes, they have bills, they have all of that stuff. I mean, what do you do when you have something? I mean, do you have any advice if you don't have an appointment, you can't write a check out of their checkbook, bills can't be paid, you don't have money to write someone else's mortgage check to keep things in balance. What do we do if your loved one passed away in February or March, and you've got not only 90 days, but you've got backups, and then you've got this and you've got that? I mean, we're talking 6, maybe 9 months out. All the different pieces. I mean, what do you do? Any recommendations or advice for people to try to address these financial failures, that, foreclosures, anything that could be detrimental?
That's going to depend on the person, again, their person's situation. So often, like I say, I recommend having a conversation with their financial advisor. That may include an insurance agent for their business, having that a key policy in place. And what type of policy is really going to depend on their financial picture to take a look at that. There are timelines, like there are different ways to initiate the process for probate. And some of those timelines can or can't impact somebody, but really having accessible assets and also transparency. I think transparency is key. Who does what, who's holding what funds and what they're for, and then knowing what the legal implications are. If you give, like, for instance, somebody a life insurance policy, that money belongs to them. The person, the beneficiary, doesn't belong to the estate per se. So there has to be a lot of trust that happens. There has to be a lot of transparency so that people's feelings, when people are feeling hurt or betrayed, that's where they react from. And from that place they react from, and it could look like civil suits, for instance, within a plan. So that transparency is really key in keeping that running smoothly in there. Again, it's going to depend on a person's familial dynamic as to what I would recommend, whether or not to make it into a public place like a court, because that is a public. It shortens the statute of limitations for contests. There's a reason why we use that. It's a tool and technique. So having that transparency is going to be key in making sure that people aren't having hurt feelings and wanting to react from that place of hurt feeling.
Wow, the relationship side of that, I can't even tell you how many estates we've addressed or dealt with and seen hurt feelings across the board. And it's, I have 100 stories I could probably share. You may probably have 1,000. When you leave money to children or leave assets to children, what's amazing is they quantify, it seems like, the amount of love that you had for your child is comparable to how much they got compared to their siblings. It's unbelievable. It's amazing how and they're always looking for that emotional connection that seems to be intertwined in our unique makeup that God has given us. It's just kind of one of those weird things. It's just I have a client who has some disproportionate giving to children, and I just cringe when I see it, and they usually blame either the attorney or their financial advisor that you didn't do this right, or and they don't realize that we have no stake in it. You need good people like yourself, Marisol, for sure.
Thank you so much.
I really appreciate it that that continues to come through with you, Marisol, is your approach in really understanding the client, their heart, their wishes, their goals, and putting the client and what it is that they're looking for and they want first and foremost. The rest of it, the technique, the tools, everything else is secondary to who that person is that you're working with and how crucial that is when you take that fiduciary approach. And I think that's one of the things that we really share in common with our practices is that approach to the relationship that is sitting across from us or in the room with us today. And thank you so much for sharing your heart there and what's going on currently in our courts and the lives of our clients and some of the things that they really need to be aware of in the conversations that they're having right now.
Yes. And I see that when clients are working with you is, again, breaking down those pieces into manageable bites, that it all doesn't have to be done at once. This is an ongoing conversation that they're having with you, learning about each time as they come in and slowly painting that picture in. And what we do is provide those structures for them, those techniques. Tell clients, take a deep breath, pick up the phone, make that first phone call, and then start creating those each day steps and it can be small, one thing that you accomplish each day until you get a plan in place that will address your situation, because the court right now is affecting, in some sense, the advice that I am giving to my client, which was different, 6 months ago. Absolutely.
Folks, you have been listening to Money on Tap, and this is Marisol Goodman, attorney at law. You can reach out to Marisol at MC Goodman Law, LLC. Phone numbers 541-554-8567. And it has been such a pleasure having you with us today. And all the best to you, your clients, your loved ones, and your family at this time. And thank you again for joining us today and sharing with us really what's important for people out there, everyone, to be paying attention right now in their estates.
Thank you so much. I appreciate being here.
We have a little time left on today's Money on Tap, so we'd like to share a portion of a previously aired program that has some really interesting and useful information that I think you'll appreciate. This is from our show, The Late Retirement Planner. Now here's Ben and Seth, and this is Money on Tap.
We're digging into one of our favorite topics, which is really helping people that have come late to retirement do some planning and figure out, how do you retire or how do you build a retirement later on in life? These are some really, really key takeaways for almost anybody that's even just looking to start retirement, because some of the principles do apply, right? We're going to save and we're going to plan and we're going to possibly limit some of our expenses, which is, I'm chuckling because it was coffee was the last thing that we were talking about. I've cut that out of my budget so many times, I can't even tell you.
Okay, so I have a horrific story. One year when we first launched our office in Keene, I remember we had rented a place to see if Keene was really going to be the home we wanted to be at, and we still have our main office there now that we bought later on. But I remember we didn't have barely running water in this place. It was just basically 2 rooms, 2 conference rooms, and a simple place and public bathroom. Basically a bathroom in the place, but. It was simple. It was very, very simple. And it was a big expense to try to see if Keene was the location. We had Starbucks literally a couple blocks down the road. And because we didn't have that, I spent a ridiculous amount of money at Starbucks because I couldn't make coffee. And we couldn't provide, simple coffee for people. So we would just, zip down, grab some coffee and grab a box of Joe or whatever, Dunkin's. Mm-hmm. But it was, when I looked at that coffee bill, I literally was just sick to my stomach at how high that was.
Yeah, I've actually, if you take a look at some interesting research out there, people that are very successful with money, what do they cut out? coffee. They make it at home because the markup on it down the street at Starbucks is so high. But hey, that's not all we're going to talk about. First of all, the Social Security side here, if you qualify for Social Security and you postpone taking Social Security, they're going to basically give you 8% year over year increase on that for doing that. And so right now, if you were to wait, if you had a maximum Social Security benefit and you were to wait until age 70, it's around $3,700. If we're talking 10 years down the road, probably going to be around $4,000. And we've talked about those numbers before, but that's for one person. And maybe if that's you and you're thinking, I'm not going to live till 78, that's one reality that might be there. You might be in the I take Social Security earlier category, but there is some limitations to, the income that you can earn. If that's what we're talking about, is trying to earn as much money to take you through retirement. So that's savings that we're going to be putting into that. But if you're a couple, and this is something that comes across our planning regularly, let's say that you're the man in this relationship and you have a history of the men dying early in your family. That's a reality that people are looking at and saying, well, I'm going to go ahead and take Social Security early. But with Social Security planning, the thing to think about here is the spousal benefit that survives, or that survivor benefit, is what the spouse that survives gets to keep with them the rest of their life.
Yeah,
okay?
this is a big hole that a lot of people who are ill say, well, I'm going to take my Social Security because I'm not going to get it, but they're not taking into account the healthy spouse.
Right. They're not planning around their spouse surviving and living till 90, whatever. In a healthy spouse, Seth, I mean, it's one of these things. If you both qualify for Social Security, I mean, the healthy spouse should take theirs, right, and let yours to continue to grow in that scenario. Right. So you take one, you leave the other, is how that works. And what you want to do is you want to take the healthy spouse, the person that's going to, there's two considerations. We're considering this basically from a maximum Social Security standpoint and trying to increase those benefits to the maximum. Whichever of those two benefit you can postpone and increase to that maximum, that is the one that you want to go ahead and postpone with. Okay, so it doesn't necessarily, it's not gender specific here. There's just whichever one of the benefits you can max out to that $3,700 by waiting till 70, or in 10 years, potentially $4,000, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, this is something, folks, that, thinking through these different moving parts is really important to talk to somebody like us or whoever your planner is, because you don't want to make some silly decision inside a health crisis that really turns out to be very costly for whoever remains in that scenario. There are times when you want to take it or you have to take it, but these are things to get advice on.
Yeah. So, Ben, we've talked about savings. We've talked about Social Security. So we've kind of backed into some of these numbers here. We, in 10 years, had a savings rate of $26,000 and an increase of 7% year over year. Have roughly, in 10 years, a little under $500,000. Those numbers, if we were to take that out, without, as a distribution for 20 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
We've got roughly $70,000 a year with the Social Security total. Now, what else do we have to solve here? What else can we do?
Well, the biggest thing that usually gets in the way is a health event. There's other things that are inside this, and we don't have time to talk about all of them in the pieces that we do. And you can give us a call. We're happy to talk through, various questions that are specific to you. But the biggest issue we address inside this, we're going to work 10 more years. At 70 years old, and I don't, 70 is not old, but it doesn't come without its complications, okay? And it can involve strokes, cardiac arrest, heart disease, things that may not allow you to really work those 10 years, things that can happen, pretty serious things. The onset of Parkinson's or Alzheimer's, things can really get messy real quick between 65 and 70. And we see that on a daily basis. One of the things we talk about with our clients is ensuring your retirement. And people say, what do you mean, insuring your retirement? And there's things out there. There's actually insurance vehicles, okay, life insurance vehicles, that can create all sorts of different moving parts for you, but can actually protect you against a health crisis while you're alive. And we've actually seen this.
That's financially protect you. We're not making any health claims with that statement.
Yeah, no health claims here. But this is a true story with a client of mine. I actually found out about this investment product. I own it myself. It's just a life insurance contract. But if you have one of the major serious ailments, which could be heart attack, stroke, ALS, some of them MS, different various things that can have between that 60 and 70 years old or 55 and so forth, they'll actually give you lump sum payments of your life insurance, a percentage, not the whole thing, a percentage. And depending on how serious your health event is, it's a lower percentage if it's really less serious, and if it's super serious, it is. But I had a client who got basically 73% of his death benefit while he was alive after a major heart attack. And he had actually just retired. He retired early, but this money actually helped further his physical health and improving his physical health as he moved forward in life. But a lot of people have used it. I've seen people who are in their mid-50s who have had this. Hey, they have a heart attack. They can't go back to work. They can't do what they were doing in construction or this or that. And all of a sudden you have this influx of money. Now, can you imagine if you had an influx of $500,000? Now your 401k that you were planning on saving that $500,000 that we talked about up till age 70, well, if that happens at 65, you're going to need $250,000 replacement there. You're halfway there, and you're not quite all the way. So, ensuring your ability to retire, there are investment products, insurance products that can do that. In that, and they have other features. And if you don't have a health event, you can turn the cash that you have in that into some sort of additional income. But these are things that you're going to want a blanket cover. They cover long-term care, terminal illness, critical illness, all these different features that they have there, irregardless of the life insurance coverage. And that's the big, huge black hole. That's what we call the black hole of retirement, is the health crisis. And for somebody who's literally staring retirement in the nose and saying, I don't have enough money, well, we get you first to a place where you're saving what you need to save, and then we look at trying to cover that black hole. Okay? Some people say, well, why would you cover the black hole first? The truth is that if you have a major health crisis and you don't have any assets to protect, well, then we're looking at Medicaid as being a provider for your care, okay, and providing for your needs. And so that's a different scenario, a different type of planning. But that's the one piece that I think is the ribbon around everything and really kind of solving the overall picture when you actually have plan and your finances in control.
So a couple of things to keep in mind as well. In terms of the savings here, you can take a couple of quick shortcuts to make those savings rates increase and to keep up with increasing those savings rates. First is be sure to save any future raises and do not absorb any additional income into your lifestyle. That is just one of the hardest things that people have to really start to focus on, is that lifestyle factor. And second, if the IRS increases the 401k contribution limit, which we've talked about there, we used a 26,000 because you're in that later phase of accumulation. You can do that with a match. I think that roughly gets us to about 34 total. But if they raise the contribution limit, increase your 401k contribution match to the new limit. So it's all about trying to super fund that savings that you're doing currently, and think of your lifestyle, bringing your lifestyle in line, because those are two of the biggest factors is creating that cushion for you to be able to go into retirement. And then also, once in that retirement phase, is continuing to stay there and not go into now I'm in travel mode. Yeah. And Ben talked about Paris a while ago. Plan that out. It's not that it's not possible or doable. It's just a matter of we don't flip a switch and start living into some other reality.
Yeah, and I think overall, it takes real courage. And my hope and prayer for everyone is that, understand you're not alone. Everyone thinks that you don't have enough money to retire. Almost everybody we meet. Oh, I can't do this. I can't do that. You'd be shocked at how much you can do and how capable and able you are.
You've been listening to Money on Tap. You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or info@yourmoneyontap.com. You can also find us at Facebook. We're at /3D Investing. We're also on Twitter at BFG_LLC. And as always, you can also find us at yourmoneyontap.com. Thanks for listening. Thanks for liking our podcast. We appreciate you, and we can't wait to make it a great day and a great life with you here at Money on Tap.
The views expressed are not necessarily the opinion of this radio station and should not be construed directly or indirectly as an offer to buy or sell any securities mentioned herein. Investing is subject to risks, including loss of principal invested. No strategy, product, material, or tool mentioned can assure a profit nor protect against loss. Please note that individual situations can vary. Therefore, the information, products, materials, or tools mentioned should be relied upon when coordinated with individual professional advice. Past performance is not a guarantee of future results. This show may be subsidized in whole or in part by a product sponsor or issuer. Securities and advisory services offered through SagePoint Financial Incorporated, member FINRA SIPC, and a registered investment advisor. All other services offered through Brayshaw Financial Group LLC are independent of SagePoint Financial. SagePoint Financial and Brayshaw Financial Group do not provide tax or legal advice. Main office is located at 116 South River Road, Bedford, New Hampshire, 03110, and can be reached at toll-free 855-226-8551.
Well, bye.